I don't want to go to purgatory. I want to go straight to heaven. A 15-year-old boy whispers these words as he's dying of leukemia. His mother is crying. The doctors have given up. He has maybe hours left. But here's what makes your blood run cold. He's not begging, he's not hoping, he's stating a fact. Because for the past 10 years, this boy has been doing something. 5 specific things, every single day, without exception. And now, in his final moments, he's so confident these 5 practices worked that he's willing to bet his eternity on them. But here's the question that should terrify every one of us. How many years will you spend in purgatory? 10 years? 50? 100? 1,000? Because here's what most Catholics don't realize. Purgatory isn't just for big sinners. It's for people like us. People who go to Mass sometimes. People who confess, maybe once a year. People who pray when we remember. People who think we're basically good enough. The average Catholic, according to mystics who've had visions of purgatory, spends decades there. Some spend centuries, burning away attachments, purifying desires, suffering in ways that make earthly pain look like nothing. And you're headed there right now, unless you change something. This 15-year-old boy figured out how to avoid it. He discovered 5 simple daily practices that the Church has now investigated and validated by declaring him a saint just this year in 2025. But here's what's crazy. These aren't secret practices. They're not mystical or complicated. They're things any Catholic can do starting today. So why aren't you doing them? In the next few minutes, I'm going to reveal all 5 practices. But more importantly, I'm going to show you why they work. Why a teenage boy was so absolutely certain he'd bypass purgatory that he made it his final declaration before death. And by the end, you'll face a choice. Keep living the way you're living and accept decades or centuries in purgatory, or start these 5 habits today and change your eternal destination. But first, you need to understand how this boy knew about purgatory in the first place, because what happened when he was 5 years old changed everything. Before we dive into Carlo's story and these 5 life-changing habits, do me a favor, drop a comment below telling me how often you currently go to confession. Once a week? Once a month? Once a year? Be honest. This will help you track your own spiritual journey as we go through this video. And if you want to avoid spending unnecessary time in purgatory, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because we're diving deep into the practices that saints use to reach heaven faster. Also, share this video with someone who needs to hear this message. Their eternity might depend on it. Now, let's get into Carlo's story and discover what he learned that changed everything. Carlo Acutis wasn't born into a religious family. His parents were wealthy professionals in Milan, Italy. They went to Mass maybe twice a year. Faith was cultural background noise, not a living reality. So, when 5-year-old Carlo walked into his mother's bedroom one morning in 1996 and said, "I saw Grandpa, he's in a place where he's being cleaned. He needs our prayers to get out," she was speechless. Her father had died months earlier. She'd never discussed the afterlife with Carlo, never mentioned purgatory, never taught him to pray for the dead. But Carlo wasn't guessing. He described it with precision. "Mama, Grandpa isn't suffering like hell. But he's not happy like heaven either. He's stuck in between. He can't help himself anymore. Only we can help him now with our prayers." Antonia, his mother, felt something shift inside her. How could her 5-year-old know this? She asked him, "Carlo, how do you know this?" "I saw him, Mama. Last night. He showed me where he was." Now here's what you need to understand. This wasn't just a sweet story about a child's imagination. This vision did something to Carlo. It revealed a truth that most of us live our entire lives avoiding. There's a deadline. A point where you can't help yourself anymore. A moment when your opportunity to prepare ends and your purification begins. And if you're not ready, you're stuck, burning, waiting, unable to move forward until someone else prays for you or until you've suffered enough to be clean. Think about that for a second. Right now, you can do something about your eternity. You can confess. You can receive the Eucharist. You can offer up your sufferings. You can pray. You can change. But after death, you're helpless, completely dependent on others praying for you. Carlo saw this reality at age 5, and it changed everything. The next morning he asked his mother to take him to church. Not just that day, every day. His mother thought it was a phase. She humored him. But when they got to Mass, something happened that she'll never forget. Carlo sat perfectly still during the entire liturgy, never fidgeted, never complained. And when the congregation went forward for communion and he had to stay behind because he hadn't received the sacrament yet, she saw tears streaming down his face. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" "I want him, Mama. I need to receive him." That's when Antonia realized her son wasn't playing religion. He'd seen something real, and he was responding to it with desperate urgency. Within weeks, Carlo received his first Holy Communion at age 7, younger than normal. And from that day forward, something began that would never stop. But here's where most people completely miss what Carlo was actually doing, because it wasn't just about going to Mass. It was about something far more strategic, something that would become the foundation for avoiding purgatory entirely. 3 months after Carlo started attending daily Mass, his mother noticed something that made no sense. He wasn't leaving when Mass ended. He'd stay, kneeling in front of the tabernacle perfectly still for an hour, sometimes longer. Other children his age could barely sit through 30 minutes of Mass without fidgeting. But Carlo would kneel there, alone in an empty church, staring at the tabernacle for 60, sometimes 90 minutes after everyone else had gone home. At first, his mother thought he was just praying, asking God for things, maybe praying for his grandfather in purgatory. But one day, she couldn't contain her curiosity anymore. She walked up to him after he'd been kneeling there for over an hour and whispered, "Carlo, what are you doing all that time? What are you thinking about?" His answer stopped her cold. "I'm not thinking, Mama. I'm being changed." Being changed. Not praying, not asking, not even worshipping in the traditional sense. Being changed. She didn't understand what he meant. How could a 7-year-old be changed by kneeling in front of a tabernacle? But Carlo tried to explain it in a way that would haunt her for years. He said, "Mama, when you stand in the sun, you get a tan without trying. Your skin just changes because of what you're exposed to. When I'm here with Jesus in the Eucharist, I become holy without trying. My soul just changes because of who I'm near." Now here's what makes this so critical for understanding how to avoid purgatory. Carlo had figured out something that most Catholics completely miss about what purgatory actually does. The Church teaches that purgatory does 2 things. First, it pays the temporal punishment due to forgiven sins. That's the part most people know about. But second, and this is the part that determines how long you're there, purgatory purifies your attachment to sin. Think about this carefully. You can go to confession right now and have all your sins forgiven. Every single one. Mortal sins, venial sins, all forgiven. But here's the question. After confession, do you still want those sins? Are you still attracted to them? Do you still have the same habits, the same patterns, the same desires pulling you towards sin? That's what purgatory burns away. Not just the guilt of sin, but the attachment to it, the desire for it, the pull toward it. And mystics who've had visions of purgatory describe this purification as fire, not symbolic fire, not metaphorical fire. Real, intense, consuming fire that burns away every single attachment until you're finally capable of existing in the presence of pure holiness. Now imagine how long that takes for most of us. We've spent our entire lives developing attachments to comfort, to pleasure, to pride, to control, to being right, to being admired. Decades of patterns, decades of habits, decades of choosing ourselves over God. That's decades, maybe centuries, of purification needed in purgatory. But here's what Carlo discovered at age 7, that purification can happen now, while you're still alive, while you can still choose it, while you can still cooperate with grace. And the way it happens is through sustained, direct, repeated contact with Christ in the Eucharist. Carlo called the Eucharist his highway to heaven. Not a side road, not the scenic route, the highway, the fastest, most direct path. Every day, without exception, Carlo attended Mass. And every day, without exception, he stayed afterward for at least an hour in front of the Eucharist. Sometimes alone, sometimes with others. But always there, always being exposed to holiness, always being changed. He wasn't trying to become holy through willpower. He wasn't trying to break his attachments through self-discipline. He was simply placing himself in the presence of the one who is holiness itself and letting that presence transform him. Day after day, month after month, year after year, the transformation was happening. His desires were changing, his attachments were breaking. His heart was being prepared for heaven. He was doing his purgatory now, while it was still his choice, while he could still offer it with love, while it was still an act of worship rather than punishment. And this became the foundation of everything else he would do. This is Carlo's first habit. Daily Mass combined with extended Eucharistic adoration, specifically with the intention of being purified and transformed in preparation for heaven. But here's what Carlo discovered next. The Eucharist alone, as powerful as it is, needs to work together with another sacrament. A sacrament that most Catholics use completely wrong. A sacrament that, when used the way Carlo used it, becomes the second key to avoiding purgatory. And what he did with this sacrament is going to challenge everything you think you know about confession. When was your last confession? Think about it for a moment. Last week? Last month? Last Christmas? Last Easter? Can you even remember? Now, let me ask you another question. How many venial sins have you committed since then? Little lies to make yourself look better, moments of impatience with your family, gossip about a co-worker, envy when someone else got what you wanted, lustful thoughts you entertained instead of rejecting, pride when you were praised, laziness when you should have helped someone. Be honest. Dozens, hundreds, maybe thousands? Every single one of those venial sins does two things to your soul. First, it creates a debt that must be paid either here on earth through penance or in purgatory through suffering. Second, and this is the part that determines how long you'll burn, each venial sin strengthens your attachment to sin. Each small sin makes the next one easier. Patterns form, habits develop, neural pathways in your brain get reinforced. Your heart becomes a little harder, a little more comfortable with choosing yourself over God. And here's the terrifying part. You don't even notice it happening. These small sins feel normal, they feel like just part of being human. You think, I'm not that bad. I'm not committing mortal sins. I'm basically a good person. But meanwhile, your soul is accumulating layer after layer of attachment, layer after layer of debt, layer after layer of purification that will be needed in purgatory. Carlo understood this when he was just 8 years old, which is why he started doing something that even his own mother thought was excessive. Every Saturday, without fail, rain or shine, healthy or sick, busy or free, Carlo went to confession. His mother was genuinely concerned. She pulled their parish priest aside after a few months and asked him, "Father, is this healthy? Why does my 8-year-old son need to confess every single week? What could he possibly be doing that requires confession this often? Is he developing some kind of unhealthy guilt complex?" The priest smiled. He'd been hearing Carlo's confessions for months by this point, and he said something to Antonia that completely changed her understanding of what her son was doing. "Your son isn't waiting until he needs confession. He's using confession before he needs it." Antonia didn't understand. "What do you mean?" "Most Catholics," the priest explained, "treat confession like emergency medicine. They wait until they've committed a mortal sin. They wait until they feel crushing guilt. They wait until they're in serious trouble with God. Then they come to confession because they need to be reconciled before they can receive communion again." But Carlo doesn't do that. Carlo treats confession like preventive medicine. He comes every week not because he's committed serious sins, but because he wants to address the small things before they become big things. He wants to root out attachments before they take deep hold. He wants to stay spiritually healthy rather than waiting until he's spiritually sick. The priest then shared something that made Antonia realize the genius of what her son was doing. Carlo's confessions last 20 to 30 minutes, not because he has long lists of serious sins. He doesn't, but because he takes the time to examine his heart with me. We don't just talk about what he did, we talk about why. We don't just address the sin, we address the attachment behind it. We look at the patterns that are trying to form, and we cooperate with God's grace to break them before they solidify. Think about what this means for purgatory. Purgatory exists to do exactly what Carlo was doing in those weekly confessions, to examine the heart, to identify attachments, to burn them away, to break patterns, to purify desires, to transform character. Carlo was doing that work now, every single week, systematically, thoroughly, cooperating fully with God's grace instead of resisting it. Week after week, month after month, year after year. The purification was happening in real time. The attachments were being broken while he was still alive. The patterns were being healed before they could take root. The priest told Antonia something that day that she would never forget. Your son is accomplishing in 8 years what takes most people a lifetime to do, or what takes decades in purgatory after death. He's becoming the kind of person who won't need extensive purification because he's choosing to be purified now. And here's what makes this so powerful. Carlo wasn't just preventing future purgatory, he was also shortening any time his loved ones might spend there. Because in those confessions, he would often offer up his penances for the souls in purgatory, particularly for his grandfather. He understood that the grace flowing through the sacrament wasn't just for him, it could benefit others. It could help free souls who were stuck, unable to help themselves. This is Carlo's second habit. Weekly confession, used not as emergency medicine, but as preventive medicine, specifically examining not just sins but the attachments behind them, and offering the penances for souls in purgatory. But Carlo discovered something else, something that would take these first two habits and multiply their effectiveness by 1,000, something that most Christians completely waste every single day. Something that was about to be tested in the most intense way possible when Carlo got sick. And this third practice is the one that gave Carlo confidence to say in his final moments, "I don't want to go to purgatory. Pain is coming to your life." Actually, let me be more accurate. Pain is already in your life, and more is on the way. Maybe it's physical, an injury, an illness, chronic discomfort, the slow deterioration that comes with aging. Maybe it's emotional, disappointment, betrayal, rejection, loss, grief, loneliness. Maybe it's circumstantial, financial pressure, work stress, relationship conflict, unfulfilled dreams. Whatever form it takes, suffering is guaranteed. Every single one of us will experience it. There's no avoiding it, no escaping it. No amount of money or success or careful planning that will exempt you from pain. But here's the question that will determine how many years you spend in purgatory. What are you doing with your pain? Most of us waste it, we complain about it, we feel sorry for ourselves. We ask, why me? We get bitter, we get angry. We try to numb it with food or entertainment or alcohol or busyness. We do everything possible to avoid it, resist it, escape it. And in the process, we throw away something of infinite value. Carlo understood this when he was just 11 years old, and what he did with his suffering would become the key to his confidence about avoiding purgatory. His school class was taking a trip to the mountains. Carlo loved the outdoors, loved hiking, loved being with his friends. He'd been looking forward to this trip for months. The morning they were supposed to leave, Carlo woke up with a severe headache. The kind that makes you want to stay in bed, the kind that makes light hurt and noise unbearable. The kind where most kids would have immediately told their parents and asked to stay home. Carlo didn't say a word. He got up, got dressed, packed his bag, went to school, got on the bus, spent the entire day hiking in the mountains with his classmates. His mother only found out about the headache 3 days later, when one of the teachers called and mentioned that Carlo had been unusually quiet during the trip, not his normal energetic self. When Antonia asked him about it, Carlo's response was matter of fact, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. "I offered it up, Mama." "Offered what up?" "The pain, the headache, the discomfort. I offered it all to God for the souls in purgatory and for my own purification, so I won't need as much suffering later." Antonia stood there stunned. Her 11-year-old son had deliberately chosen to suffer in silence, not out of pride or stoicism, but as a strategic spiritual practice. But here's what Carlo understood that most Catholics have forgotten. Our suffering has value, infinite value, when we unite it to Christ's suffering on the cross. Listen to what St. Paul writes, "I rejoice in my sufferings for your sake, and in my flesh I am filling up what is lacking in the afflictions of Christ on behalf of his body, which is the Church." Now, this doesn't mean Christ's suffering was insufficient. His sacrifice on the cross was infinite in value because he is God. His death paid the debt for all sins of all people for all time. But what's lacking is our participation in it. Our willingness to take our small sufferings and unite them to his great suffering. Our choice to transform our pain from something meaningless into something redemptive. When we do this, when we deliberately offer our suffering to God, it takes on the infinite value of Christ's sacrifice. It can pay the temporal punishment for our own sins. It can help souls in purgatory. It can benefit the entire Church. But if we don't offer it, if we just waste it in complaining and self-pity, it accomplishes nothing except making us miserable. Carlo grasped this at age 11, and from that point forward, he offered everything. Every inconvenience, every disappointment, every moment of discomfort, every time he was tired. Every time he was frustrated, every time friends excluded him, every time something didn't go his way. He offered it all, with clear intention, with specific purposes, for the Holy Father, for the Church, for souls in purgatory, for his own purification. And then came the ultimate test of this practice. When Carlo was 15, he got sick. At first it seemed like the flu, fever, fatigue, but it didn't get better. Within days, he was in the hospital. Within a week, he had a diagnosis: acute leukemia, aggressive, advanced. The doctors tried everything, but the prognosis was grim. The pain became intense. The chemotherapy was brutal. Nausea, weakness, loss of appetite, loss of hair. His body was being destroyed by both the cancer and the treatment. Most 15-year-olds in that situation would be consumed by fear, anger, or despair. Why is this happening to me? This isn't fair. I'm too young. I haven't even lived yet. Carlo's response was different, dramatically different. His mother remembers sitting beside his hospital bed as he was going through one of the worst episodes of pain. She was crying, wishing she could take his suffering on herself. Carlo looked at her and said, "Don't cry, Mama. I'm offering all of this, every single moment. The pain, the fear, the nausea, all of it. I'm uniting it to Jesus on the cross, for the Pope, for the Church, for souls in purgatory, and for my own soul. So I won't have to go to purgatory. I want to go straight to heaven." Do you see what he was doing? He was choosing his purgatory. He was accepting purification now, while it was still voluntary, while he could still offer it with love, while it could still have redemptive value for others. He understood that every moment of suffering he offered was like making an advance payment, reducing the debt, shortening the time, preparing his soul for immediate entrance into heaven. And his confidence in those final days wasn't presumption. It was the natural result of 10 years of deliberate cooperation with God's purifying grace. This is Carlo's third habit, deliberately offering every suffering, every inconvenience, every pain to God, specifically for souls in purgatory and for your own purification. Uniting your small sufferings to Christ's infinite suffering to give them redemptive value. But there was something else Carlo was doing during those 15 years, something that shocked everyone who knew him. Something that's especially relevant for us today, because it involves the very device you're probably holding in your hand right now. Something that the Church says was so significant that it became one of the primary reasons for his canonization. And what he did with technology will challenge everything about how you're using yours. Let me ask you a brutally honest question. What did you do on your phone yesterday? Scrolled through social media, looking at other people's lives, watched videos for entertainment, played games, got into pointless arguments in comment sections, sent messages about nothing important? Wasted hours on things you can't even remember today? Now, let me ask you another question. What will any of that matter in 100 years? In 1,000 years? In eternity? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. It's all dust, wasted time that you'll never get back, wasted talent that God gave you for eternal purposes. Wasted opportunity that could have been storing up treasure in heaven, but instead stored up nothing. And here's the painful truth. Every hour you waste on meaningless things is an hour you could have been reducing your time in purgatory. Every talent you bury in entertainment is a talent that will have to be accounted for at judgment. Jesus told a parable about servants who were given talents by their master. Some invested them and multiplied them. One buried his talent in the ground and did nothing with it. When the master returned, that servant was cast out, not because he did something evil, but because he did nothing with what he'd been given. How much have you been given? Intelligence, creativity, skills, technology, resources, time. And what are you doing with it? Carlo Acutis had the same tools you have. He was a teenager in the early 2000s. He had a computer. He had internet access. He had the same distractions and temptations that every teenager has. But he did something radically different. When Carlo was 11 years old, he asked his parents for books, not video games, not the latest electronic gadgets, books on computer programming and web design. His parents were surprised, but supportive. If their son wanted to learn technology, why not? Maybe he'd become an engineer or software developer someday. But Carlo had a completely different plan, a plan that would impact souls around the world long after his death. For the next year, Carlo spent hours after school teaching himself to code, HTML, CSS, basic programming languages, web design principles. His mother would find him at his computer late into the evening, not playing games or chatting with friends, but writing code. "Carlo, what are you building?" she'd ask. "What's this for?" "Something important, Mama. Something that will help people believe. You'll see." By the time Carlo was 12 years old, he'd created something remarkable. A comprehensive website cataloging every single Eucharistic miracle recognized by the Catholic Church throughout history. Not just a simple list, a professional, multimedia presentation with photographs, historical documentation, scientific analysis, witness testimonies. Cases where bread transformed into actual human heart tissue, where wine became real human blood, where hosts remained incorrupt for centuries. Events that happened in the Middle Ages and events that happened in recent decades. The website was so well researched, so professionally done, so compelling that it's still being used today in parishes around the world. It's been translated into multiple languages. It's been turned into a traveling exhibition. It's brought countless people to faith in the real presence of Christ in the Eucharist. But here's the question, why? Why would a 12-year-old spend hundreds of hours creating this instead of doing what every other 12-year-old was doing? Because Carlo understood something that directly connects to avoiding purgatory. Jesus said, "Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy, and where thieves break in and steal, but store up for yourselves treasures in heaven." Every soul that grew closer to God because of Carlo's website, every person who came to believe in the real presence because of the miracles he documented, every heart that was moved toward Christ, toward confession, toward the Eucharist because of the work he did. Each one became treasure stored in heaven. Each one reduced his own debt. Each one proved he was living not for himself, but for others. Each one was breaking his attachment to selfishness and building up his capacity for the self-giving love that defines heaven. Because here's what most people don't understand about purgatory. Yes, it burns away attachment to sin, but more fundamentally, it burns away selfishness. It purifies our tendency to live for ourselves instead of for God and others. Heaven isn't a place of isolated individuals getting their own private rewards. Heaven is perfect communion, perfect love, perfect self-giving. If you're still fundamentally selfish, if you're still fundamentally living for yourself, you literally cannot exist there. You'd be incapable of the kind of love that heaven is. So, purgatory has to burn away that selfishness. And for most of us, we've spent decades, our entire lives, building up habits of selfishness. Decades of living primarily for our own comfort, our own pleasure, our own preferences, our own advancement. That's decades of purification needed. But Carlo was breaking that pattern now, while alive. He was deliberately choosing to use his gifts not for self-promotion, not for entertainment, not for making money, but for helping others reach heaven. He was becoming the kind of person who could walk straight into heaven because he'd already been practicing heaven's values on earth. He was already living for others, already giving himself away, already storing up treasure that would last forever. And here's what should convict every single one of us. Carlo was a teenager. He had the same technology we have, the same social media, the same internet, the same temptations to waste time. But he sanctified it. He redeemed it. He used it for eternal purposes. What are you doing with your gifts? With your time? With your technology? With your talents? Are you storing up treasure in heaven, or are you wasting your life on things that won't matter at all in eternity? Because I promise you this, at your judgment, you will give an account for every talent, every gift, every hour, every opportunity. And every wasted moment is another moment you'll spend in purgatory, wishing you'd made different choices. This is Carlo's fourth habit, using your specific gifts, talents, and resources deliberately to help others reach heaven, transforming the tools of your generation from instruments of distraction into instruments of evangelization. But there's one more habit, one final practice that Carlo did every single day without exception, one practice that involves the one person who has unique power to help you at the moment of your judgment. One practice that ties all the other four together and makes them exponentially more powerful. And if you only take one thing from this video, let it be this fifth and final habit. Imagine this scene for a moment. You've just died. Your soul separates from your body, and suddenly you're standing before God. The moment you've been avoiding thinking about your entire life, the moment of judgment. Every sin you ever committed is laid bare. Every lie you told, every selfish choice, every wasted opportunity, every talent you buried, every person you hurt, every time you chose yourself over God. Nothing is hidden, nothing is forgotten. Everything is visible in perfect clarity. The verdict is coming, heaven, hell, or purgatory. In that moment, in that absolutely critical, eternal moment, wouldn't you want someone there, someone who could speak for you, someone who could intercede, someone who has the ear of the judge because she's his mother? Carlo spent 15 years building a relationship with exactly that person, and it became his fifth and final habit, the one that protected and amplified all the others. Every single evening before bed, without exception, Carlo prayed the rosary. His mother remembers nights when Carlo was completely exhausted. Nights when he'd been at school all day, played soccer with friends, worked on his website for hours. Nights when he could barely keep his eyes open. Nights when he'd stumble into his room after 9 or 10 at night. He'd still kneel beside his bed and pray all 5 decades of the rosary. Every night, no exceptions. Even on the night before he died, when his body was ravaged by leukemia, when he could barely speak, when every breath was a struggle, Carlo whispered the prayers of the rosary one final time. But this wasn't just religious duty. This wasn't just honoring Mary because she's the Mother of God. This was strategy, deliberate preparation for the moment of judgment. Throughout church history, countless saints have testified to a remarkable pattern. Those with true devotion to Mary rarely spend long in purgatory. Some bypass it entirely. Others are released quickly. Why? Because Mary is the Mother of Mercy. Because she stood at the foot of the cross and participated in the work of redemption. because Jesus in his final moments gave her to us as our mother specifically for our hour of death. "Behold your mother," he said to John, and through John to all of us. Carlo knew the promises. He'd read about St. Dominic, who received a vision of Mary, promising that those who faithfully prayed the rosary would receive special protection at the hour of death and special graces to avoid hell and shorten their time in purgatory. He knew about Fatima, where Mary appeared to 3 children in 1917 and showed them a vision of hell. She didn't show them purgatory, she showed them hell. Why? To motivate them to pray and sacrifice specifically to save souls from hell and purgatory. Mary urgently called the world to prayer, to the rosary, to sacrifice, specifically for this purpose, saving souls. Carlo took that call seriously. He understood that Mary wasn't just offering comfort, she was offering a specific path, a specific protection, a specific help at the moment when we need it most. So his daily rosary wasn't just prayer, it was relationship building. It was establishing a connection with the one person who could help him most when he faced judgment. Think about this. If you spend 15 years praying the rosary every single day, that's over 5,000 rosaries. That's over 50,000 Hail Marys. That's roughly 500 hours of meditation on the mysteries of Christ's life, death, and resurrection through Mary's eyes. That's not casual devotion, that's not occasional prayer, that's a deep, real, personal relationship with the Mother of God. By the time Carlo faced his death, Mary wasn't a distant figure he'd heard about in church. She was his mother, real, personal, present. And when he faced judgment, he had confidence not just in God's mercy, but in Mary's intercession, in her maternal care, in her promise to those who are devoted to her. Saints throughout history have said that Mary is like a lawyer at our judgment. She presents our case. She points out every rosary we prayed, every time we honored her, every time we asked for her help. She reminds her son of the relationship we built with her. And her son, who honored his mother during his earthly life, continues to honor her in heaven. This is Carlo's 5th and final habit, daily rosary, prayed not out of obligation, but as deliberate relationship building with the Mother of Mercy, specifically asking for her protection at the hour of death and her help in avoiding or shortening purgatory. 5 habits, daily Mass and Eucharistic adoration, weekly confession, offering all suffering, using your gifts for evangelization, daily rosary. 5 simple practices that Carlo did consistently for 10 years. 5 practices that gave him confidence in his final moments. October 12th, 2006, 6:45 in the evening. Carlo Acutis died in a hospital in Monza, surrounded by his family, with priests praying beside his bed. His final words, "I'm happy to die because I lived my life without wasting even a minute on things that don't please God." Then he closed his eyes, and he was gone. Just 15 years old. And the Church has validated his approach by declaring him a saint just this year, in 2025. So now we come to the moment of truth. How long will you spend in purgatory? When was your last confession? If it was more than a month ago, you're already accumulating debt that takes years in purgatory to pay. How often do you attend Mass? What do you do when you suffer? Do you complain or offer it up? What are you doing with your gifts and talents? Are you using them to help others reach heaven, or wasting them on entertainment that won't matter in eternity? When was the last time you prayed the rosary? Your answers will determine how long you suffer. Because here's the reality most Catholics live in denial about. Purgatory is your future unless you change something. The average Catholic who goes to Mass occasionally, confesses once or twice a year, never offers up suffering, and rarely prays is looking at decades in purgatory, maybe centuries. They had time, they had opportunity, and they wasted it. Don't be one of them. You face a choice. Keep living the way you're living and accept decades or centuries of purification through fire. Or start Carlo's 5 habits today. 5 habits. Just 5 daily practices that saints have used for centuries. Carlo did them for 10 years and died confident he was ready for heaven. How much is your eternity worth? Is it worth 2 hours a day? If not, then enjoy your centuries in purgatory. But if you're willing to take this seriously, if you're willing to cooperate with grace the way Carlo did, you can have the same confidence he had. You can face your deathbed and say, "I'm ready, I did the work, I'm prepared for heaven." The path is clear, the choice is yours. If Carlo's story has moved you, I want you to do 3 things before you close this video. First, choose one habit to start this week, not "I'll try." Choose one specific habit and commit, attending 1 extra Mass, scheduling confession, setting a reminder to pray 1 decade of the rosary tonight. Choose something specific and do it. Second, pray with me. Saint Carlo Acutis, you understood the reality of eternity and prepared yourself for heaven. Pray for me. Help me to love Jesus in the Eucharist as you did. Help me take confession seriously. Help me offer my sufferings. Help me use my gifts for God's kingdom. Help me develop devotion to Mary. Intercede for me that I might avoid unnecessary time in purgatory and reach heaven quickly. Most of all, pray that I will stop wasting my life and start living for eternity. Amen. Third, share this video. Send it to that friend who hasn't been to confession in years, that family member who only goes to Mass on Christmas, that co-worker who thinks they're basically good enough. This video could change their eternity. And hit that like button so more people can see it. Subscribe and turn on notifications because we're creating content that helps you reach heaven, not just entertains you. Remember what Carlo said, "We are all born originals, but many die as photocopies." Don't be a photocopy of the lukewarm world around you. Be a saint. Be someone who takes eternity seriously. Carlo lived only 15 years, but he lived them with more purpose than most people who live to 90. He didn't waste a single day. And now he's in heaven, interceding for us, showing us the path, proving that it's possible. The same path is open to you. The same grace that worked in Carlo is available to you. The same heaven that Carlo entered is waiting for you. But you have to choose it. You have to take these 5 habits seriously. Don't wait. Don't put it off. Start today, right now, this moment. Your eternity depends on it. May Saint Carlo Acutis pray for all of us. May his example inspire us, and may we all meet him in heaven one day. Every moment matters. Every choice counts. Every day is an opportunity to prepare for eternity. Don't waste it. God bless you.